Are you tired of the cookie-cutter approach to education that's stuck in the last century? Are you seeking a win-win situation where your family thrives, your kid's education is revolutionary, and you still get to chase your own dreams? Welcome to Unschooled Unleashed. Unlock your child's genius. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, an unapologetic rebel dad and promoter of what many consider to be educational anarchy. You know the world isn't going to be won by those that just toe the line. It's the innovators, the visionaries, and the resilient spirits that are going to thrive. Our mission here is to forge those world changers within our very homes with less stress, energy, and time. Unschooled Unleashed starts now. Welcome back to another episode of Unschooled Unleashed. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, and today we're going to talk about balancing freedom with structure in unschooling. I think this is important to us as unschoolers because we tend to crave that unstructured approach. That is unschooling by definition as far as an approach to education. But I do think we have to provide at least a minimum amount of structure in our children's lives in order for them to operate optimally. I think setting great routines and habits is very beneficial for all human beings, and that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode. So with that, let's dive in. Today we're going to talk about balancing freedom and structure, specifically when you're unschooling, because I think it's important to have structure. And I know a lot of unschoolers, the whole thing is it's unstructured, right? We have no curriculum, but I don't believe that people thrive in an unstructured environment. In fact, I think allowing the freedom to learn self-discipline to be structured is probably a benefit. And I think the only way to allow them to do that is to, one, provide a base, a foundation of structure in which to build upon, and then two, learn the self-discipline to give yourself the structure you need to accomplish whatever you're moving towards. And I think that doing this at a young age is very advantageous, which is why I unschool my children. So we're going to discuss the importance of structure in young children's education and how to gradually incorporate more freedom as they grow. Now, in full transparency, my kids are currently 10, 8, and 6. So that's about the furthest I've experienced in this unschooling process. However, I was unschooled for a year. I was homeschooled for multiple years, and I've been to public school, private school, small classroom, mixed age class, basically the whole, all the different ways for the most part. I mean, there's many more ways, but I think I've had broad exposure, so I can speak with at least a little bit of, I don't want to say authority, but experience on some of the stuff, especially since I have a value of freedom or liberty, and I love having my life unstructured, but at the same time, I do better in a structured environment. And I think that developing that discipline in order to achieve whatever goals are important to me is necessary, especially as we look up into the future for children. And even myself, most of the jobs that are going to be available in the United States will be freelance or entrepreneurial jobs, is what it's predicted. I think it's by 2027, 2028. And we're almost half right now. So there's a good chance that you and I and our children will have a very unstructured world and need the self-discipline to be structured in order to achieve our goals and even make money as far as our careers are concerned. So there's the foundation of why this episode exists. And since you guys believe in home education, specifically you're interested in an unschooling, or at least versions of it, we're going to talk about the benefits of structure, implementing it for younger children, and then transitioning it to more freedom with older children. And again, this is all in the unschooling context. So there's a ton of unstructured learning already going on. And we're just going to specifically focus on giving more structure in that setting to the benefit of the children. I think school-age children have so much structure in their life that they're drowning in it. I think they actually need more freedom, but unschooled kids may need more structure. All kids need at least a foundation of structure. All right, so the benefits of structure for young children. One, when we provide structure, and this goes for adults too, it gives people a sense of security. Young children feel safe and secure when they know what to expect each day. Adults feel safe and secure when they know what to expect each day. This is why people hate change, at least one of the reasons. They know what to expect, and when you introduce change, it's called chaos. They're not able to predict what their world is going to look like, and people fight that tooth and nail. People hate change. When I was an educator at a hospital, I was the face of change. Anytime we made a change, we had to teach people what the change was, so guess who walks in? My face. And I faced a ton of resistance. Sometimes I didn't even believe that we needed to have this change. But here I am arguing for it. Healthcare is a heavily regulated industry, and some of the things that we're expected to do is kind of silly. So it was fun trying to get people motivated to change, even though you don't believe in what you're doing, and no one potentially in the hospital even did, which is really funny to me. But the regulators are always right, so that's what we had to do. Either way, my experience with that was people just hate change. They don't know what to predict. They have a hard time imagining a future with this change. They like the security of it. And same goes for children. Predictability in children's environment can reduce anxiety and improve overall well-being. That's another great example. Or not an example, that's another great benefit. We'll go into how to do that, but it's been shown that structure, especially for younger children, reduces anxiety and helps with their well-being. Development of routines is another benefit of providing structure, because the routines are part of the structure. They help children understand the flow of the day and what comes next. It reduces the amount of energy that they have to spend trying to figure out a new task. It's just like adults. If you've ever... what is the book? It's a habit book. I think it's called Atomic Habits. And then there's something, Habits of Highly Effective People. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've ever gone into the habit rabbit hole. But the whole idea is establishing routines or habits reduces the energy around that task specifically. And if you do it at the same time and you have habits before, those habits are precursors for the next thing, and then you just have this whole routine. A routine is like just a whole bunch of habits in a row. And that reduces the amount of energy you have to expend on it. You get all the benefits without having to expend all that energy. It's actually a pretty cool concept. But one of the benefits of establishing these routines is it aids in developing self-discipline and time management skills. When you provide this baseline structure for them, they can build upon it. And that's actually what I want to talk about next, is it's a foundation for independence. A structured environment provides a foundation in which children can build upon their independence. And as they grow older, the routines and structure that they're accustomed to help them manage their own time and responsibilities. You can imagine that if you set consistent wake-up times or bedtimes or lunch times or quiet times, that this would help children be able to then plan out the rest of the time in the unstructured time. That, when you're providing structure during these times, they can provide their own structure around that, and they have their own independence and they can grow on that. So it's going to help them become more disciplined. Giving them the opportunity to learn from their failures. If they have something that's really important to them and they're just not able to move forward with it, first off, I have a bunch of questions why that might be. Maybe they're pursuing the wrong thing, but one of the things might be they just don't have the discipline or time management skills to be able to do that. And again, this comes with age, but we need to give them the opportunity to learn that. Another benefit of providing structure for your children is it improves focus and behavior. Structured environments can help children focus better and really you're providing clear expectation and routines that they can predict, and I think that reduces a lot of behavioral issues. Now, you're not going to avoid them all with this, trust me, but having the same conversation 3 times a day, 7 days a week, eventually, if you're consistent, will set in and they'll just accept it. If you have a strong-willed child, there's other strategies, but either way, even the strong-willed child is craving that structure. And oftentimes, when there's chaos introduced, we become a little bit irritable, and this goes for children too, and we might see that as expressed in, the fear expressed in just behavioral issues, amongst other things. It can also improve compliance, doing what you're asking them to do. Because they know what to expect, they're able to just kind of do it. You're also supporting their cognitive development when you provide structure, because it provides opportunities for learning and skill building. When they can predict when, say, bedtime is, or wake-up time, or whatever it might be, they can plan in between. And when they can plan in between, when you're unschooling, they're going to be learning something. They're going to be creative. They're going to be doing something productive, in a sense. And when I say productive, I don't mean it as in like produces something on the other end, tangible. It might be rest, that's productive behavior. But this structure allows them to get what they need in order to do what they want to do, because it's predictable, because they have a lower anxiety about their day, because they don't have to expend as much energy doing things where you have to do every day either way. Engaging in a variety of structured activities also helps children develop just different cognitive abilities. For example, if you were to do maybe daily quiet time. This is something that we've done on and off. We have a daily quiet time. You can sleep, you can do whatever you want, but you have to do something that is quiet and does not involve other people. A lot of times they'll take a nap. Sometimes they will work on maybe a math problem I laid out for them. Sometimes they will read a book. Sometimes they will do, some kind of learning game on their iPad that they have access to. Any of these types of things. And it's just this dedicated focus time. I think learning how to focus is also a skill, and that's another reason we often do those daily quiet times. However, we're kind of out of whack because we've just been so busy lately and we're not providing enough structure around that. But I'd like to bring that back because I think that was really beneficial. Learning how to focus is, I think, one of those little secret things that, your children can, if they have the ability to sit down and focus for an extended period of time, they are going to be in high demand. Moving on to implementing structure for younger children. And this is kind of where I'm at. Something that I've done. One, consistent daily routines. Establishing regular times for meals, play, learning, and rest, I think, are very valuable. You can use visual schedules. We put up a calendar in our dining room so that way they can see what's going on. We've had some success with that as long as we keep it updated and we make them responsible for updating it. But oftentimes they forget. But we tell them what's going on. We tell them what we're going to do, and we try and update it if it's something that only we know about. But in general, we try and keep that thing updated so they know what to expect. We also share a calendar on our iPads and phones and all that stuff, so that way they can see different things that we're doing, including when they're allowed to play video games, when they're, different things that are important to them, their baseball games, all that stuff, I think is important to be able to see. Another way to implement structure for younger children. Before I move on from that, I want to say that just knowing what your future looks like provides a lot of comfort for children. They want to know what we're doing this evening. They want to know this, that, what time's dinner. Giving them that information reduces their anxiety. So that consistent daily routine reduces the amount of questions and allows them to just kind of live their life. And decreases the amount of work we have to do, like telling them. So any way you can do that is helpful. Structured learning activities is another way to implement this with younger children. You can do it can even be short, engaging learning sessions into the day, just little things like we do math every once in a while. It might only be 20, 30 minutes, but that's the way you can do it. And that little short burst of structured focus helps them learn something that they might not have learned before. I think that's really beneficial. A lot of hands-on activities also provide that. And we try and do those in the early morning, like play-based learning, so they can make their learning fun and build their creativity. And I think that's really effective as well. I think that the routine, we usually avoid screens until the afternoon. That type of structure also helps because they do other stuff off screens in the morning, and in the afternoon they know they can do screens, and we have a bunch of learning apps or creative apps, stuff like that they can play with or learn on, and those periods also help as well. Also with the structured learning activities, it's also helpful to allow just complete freedom to do whatever they want at times. So we have it structured where one day a week they can just take the whole day and do whatever they want. Feel complete unstructuredness. There is still, of course, some structure with it, like bedtimes, wake up times, lunch, that kind of stuff. But that's just the foundation, and they can make decisions over everything else. So you get that nice mix of unstructured and then structured. And I think that just builds a sense of understanding how structuredness helps you, as well as a time to kind of let your hair down and have that unstructured time. And I think that's beneficial for all of us, to be honest with you. We call it the Sabbath, for adults, and for our kids, we call it Freedom Day because we celebrate them being big boys and big girls, and they're allowed to really do what they want throughout the day. And it's a reward for handling business all week. They're allowed to make a million mistakes. As long as they don't try and turn it into a habit, they get their Freedom Day. And I think that's kind of a cool concept, as well as like getting rid of, punishments. Since it's a celebration of being a big boy and big girl, they have this, they know this video game time is coming, or movie time is coming. They tend to get a little bit more, how do I say it? Like their behavior improves when they know something can be taken away, because it's a privilege, not an entitlement. I think that's really beneficial, but also I just think they crave that unstructured time when you have a pretty structured environment, even though we're much less unstructured than most families as far as learning is concerned. Moving on. Some more structure that I think is really beneficial is clear boundaries and expectations. Setting clear age-appropriate boundaries helps their interpersonal relationships, helps them communicate better. I think that people, young children, being people as well, but everybody knowing their limits on how far they should go with something or how much they should push is very beneficial. And the structure of personal space, personal boundaries, I think is an important concept, in one in which it actually reduces the anxiety of the child because they know what to expect from you. because you're establishing these boundaries. I think that's very beneficial. Even just regular boundaries for how business is handled within the house. In our house, we talk about just a couple rules. And we all agree to these rules, or we put it up for debate on if we should change these rules. But no one really wants to change these rules because no one would really want this. Treat each other how we would want to be treated if we were them. That's a rule. And we always go back to that rule. That sets a clear expectation and a boundary in which your behavior, the child's behavior, or all of our behavior is handled. We do the same thing with adults because we're training them to be adults. And when they choose not to, we say we can remove this rule, but here's what it's going to look like. Do you really want to pursue this? Because we can make it a family conversation and figure this out. And the answer is almost always no. The one time that I think we actually went down the almost yes route, we got to the point where when everybody was going over and taking toys from the one who was causing issues taking toys, they didn't want to do it anymore. They wanted some structure. A necessary lesson and unfun to do, but sometimes doing the opposite is exactly what people need. And it's a learning lesson. On that topic, we do need to incorporate flexibility within the structure. Okay? Allowing for more flexibility within a structured routine, collection of habits to accommodate the child's interests and needs. We're going to raise every child to their own bent, meaning we're going to treat them as an individual with their own needs that are different from the next kids. Allowing for flexibility within that structured routine to accommodate what their goals are and who they are and how they function best, I think is important as well. So we adjust the routine as necessary to keep it engaging for the child's development. And within context. For example, it's a summer of 2024 as I speak. We're in the dog days of summer, we're mid-July, and we're not really focusing on a lot of structured learning activities. Like we were doing documentaries and math, and we still do, don't get me wrong. However, it's not a routine thing that we've been doing. We've been more focusing on getting them outside and playing, and they've been really into making movies with their cousins who are in town for the summer and getting to the pool. That's where my boys are at right now, is at the pool with their cousins because we got a 2024 summer pool pass. And I think they're learning how to swim and learning how to play with other kids and just learning those interpersonal skills, especially since those are on a shorter supply when you do home education. So I think it's really beneficial for the kids to have that. So we don't hold them to a rigid structure during this time because it's a different season. And we always give ourselves the ability to call an audible when it's just not working out. So you got to build that flexibility within. Don't get too attached to a routine, although it's very nice. And if you can keep it up, that's great. But just remember to be responsive and look around and take in, the cues from the environment that you're in. Now, sometimes, and this is something that's more like adjacent to structure. It's just a tool for structure, but oftentimes we find that trying to make quote-unquote fair happen is difficult because fair is the most ambiguous word I've ever experienced in this world. When I was the hospital educator for almost 10 years, people would use this word fair. And it was really interesting to me in the ways that it was used, because it was used on opposite ends and from different perspectives, and they meant the same thing. They all made sense, but they all disagreed with each other, which was a conundrum I couldn't wrap my head around. So the word fair actually means nothing to me. It just means makes sense to me. For example, what's fair to, say, a new employee that was coming into the hospital was that we provide them a great education and all the support they needed to be able to thrive in their new role. And we did that. But those who argued that this employee that might have been struggling, it was the most fair thing we could do was let them go, meaning fire them within the first 90 days because they were not a good fit and they weren't able to catch on. So the most fair thing to do was give them ongoing support for eternity, according to one person. And then the next person says the most fair thing to do is give them feedback that they just aren't fit for the job at this location at the very least. Both of those are valid points. Both of them are very fair ways to do it. What's fair for the next employee might be completely different, which is crazy. For example, we might have one employee who is able to catch on very quick and is able to get through into the areas of the hospital that are considered more desirable, meaning like you had to kind of work your way into those areas and get experience. And they would do it at an accelerated rate. And people would argue that's fair because they are just catching on quicker or they're putting in more effort or whatever the reason might be. But then you talk to someone else, and what's fair for that person or the next employee who struggles might be putting them in there even though they haven't demonstrated the ability to be able to comprehend what they need to comprehend or do what they need to do in order to thrive in that area. And it's like, well, what's fair to the patient then? And we could just keep on going. And this is just a hot topic with me. I'll stop there because I'm going to talk about this for the rest of the podcast if I don't stop myself. Fair is a relative term, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And one of the ways we as a family have decided the fairest way to do something is the use of timers. It can signal a transition between activities. It can signal a transition in responsibilities. Time is the one constant that we all experience I shouldn't say experience at the same rate, but it is all equal for all of us in that sense. As far as I'm concerned, it might be the most fair way with young children that we can do something. You get 15 minutes on this, and then they get 15 minutes on it, or an hour, whatever they decide. It ensures a smooth transition, and it's quantitative, meaning it's measurable. That's one thing we do, and that's structure. And that provides a little sense of security that my brother, who is playing video games for the next 30 minutes, that I will get that same 30 minutes next. And that, again, that kind of structure decreases the behavioral outbursts and because they have a sense of security. I also think that a way to implement structure for young children is designated learning and play spaces. This is something that we're on short supply of because we live in such a small place. And it would be a huge benefit if we can find one of these spaces for our children. And I do have some places, but not like I want. I think it's good for all of us, having a designated learning, play, and business place. But creating specific areas for different activities helps children understand and kind of carve out a place in their environment in which certain things are going to be done. And I think that's kind of a predictable thing for them, that when I'm sitting at the table, I eat. When I am at my desk, I am doing focused work on something that's meaningful to me, stuff like that. Or reading a book. When we have bunk beds, and we covered them with sheets, so that way it's kind of a playhouse. We gave them lights and built a bookshelf and all this stuff. And we say you can stay up as late as you want and wake up as early as you want, but you're going to be responsible for your behavior either way. So they get to learn that how much sleep they need and when to go to bed. But we allow them to read books and use their nightlight as late as they want. And these designated spaces for sleeping and reading or drawing, I think, are beneficial. We don't allow screens in the bed. That's one thing I will say. I'm not going to spend as much time on this next section, which is transitioning to more freedom for older children because I don't have as much experience on it, but here's how I plan to handle some of it, at least as far as I can see now. One, my oldest is 10 years old, and he has more responsibility. We're giving him a gradual increase in his choices and allowing him to make more decisions about what he does than the other kids for the most part. And I think we need, as we allow our children to grow, we need to give them the freedom. And then eventually, by the time they hit like 13, 14, they're going to start to rebel at some point. If you restrict them, they need to individualize. So giving them responsibility at the rate they can handle it, I think, is a beneficial thing, which is why I try and get it done earlier rather than later, but it is a gradual increase. You can't just throw it all at them. And you got to look at the risk. You have to be willing to allow them to destroy everything you've laid as well, because they might have to learn on their own. That might be beneficial. Encourage self-directed projects. They're into making movies like my kids are right now, summer 2024. Lean into it. Support them in pursuing those projects based on their interests. Provide resources like downloading the apps that they need to make movies or buying them the equipment. And nothing too extravagant. We just have iPads and a couple apps. But giving them these resources actually allow them to really find what they're good at and be creative. We might even offer, and I did offer it, I don't think he really took it seriously, but hey, look, here's a video editing course if you want to learn more. Stuff like that, I think is very beneficial. Flexible scheduling is another thing you can do. Gradually move towards a more flexible schedule that adapts to the child's changing needs and interests. Allow for spontaneous learning opportunities and still have some structure in the background. And just kind of go with the flow. For example, if your child is really engaged in a project like a movie, allow them just the space to continue working on it, as opposed to following the rigid routine. I think that's beneficial. Allow them to develop their own time management skills. And I touched on this earlier, but teaching older children how to manage their time effectively is crucial. And I think that the way we do that is allowing them to learn hard lessons. So if there's something meaningful to them, allow them to take the responsibility for it. And if they don't achieve that, well, that's learning the hard way. You can tell them what to do, but they have a choice to follow it or not. And if you take over for them, they'll never learn. So teaching them the easy way, which is telling them, here's what works for me and here's what I see work for others, to the best of my knowledge. They can use that, and if they want to learn the hard way, well, let them learn the hard way. Allow them to use tools like planners, calendars, to-do lists, whatever might help organize them. Let them organize their own space in the way they see fit. Encourage them to create a weekly plan, outlining their goals. Like maybe you have like a summer goal of spending as much time with cousins as possible, or making movies, or whatever it might be, and then allow them to do that. And I think that helps center them. I know that's a good practice, at least for adults. Balance their academics and personal interests. So if you're doing some kind of structured learning activity, now again, we're unschoolers. If you're listening to this podcast, you're at least interested in unschooling. We don't do curriculum, mandatory curriculum, as an unschooler. But I believe that you can do curriculums within unschooling. For example, they want to take a class, let them take a class. It's just interest-based, child-led, right? The structure of a curriculum is fine, to me, anyways. And I think it's actually beneficial. For example, college, they're going to be choosing whatever they wanted to learn for the most part, and I think that's good. That was where I thrived. But we do need to teach them how to balance academics with personal interests. So trying to allow them to have hobbies, don't try and push them in a direction, all that stuff. A holistic approach to education that includes physical, emotional, and social development, as well as some other stuff that I'm probably missing, I think is beneficial. Another way as they age, incorporating real-world learning opportunities as a part of the learning process. For example, internships, volunteer work, traveling, all this stuff can provide valuable learning experiences. And ways you can do that are encouraging them to go out there and meet people who are doing it and learning from them, and maybe even doing it themselves, or giving a helping hand. And I think that provides some structure to their world that they can, model and then implement in their own life. And I think modeling is one of those ways that we're able to provide structure to ourselves, because we learn from that really easily. That's the way the human mind works, is that we model behavior and then we're able to do it ourselves. And that kind of structure is, I think, really beneficial. So with that, I think I will end today's episode. So stay curious, stay unschooled, and stay away from the algebra nightmares. I'll catch you in the next episode. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and bring out the big guns. If you support our mission, then please leave a review. On Unschooled Unleashed, we are talking about using a radical approach to education in today's world, and the more 5-star reviews we have, the more people will feel comfortable with the ideas, strategies, and principles we discuss. It gives legitimacy to our message, and the podcast's algorithm prioritizes us so we can reach more people. You may even have your 5-star review read on our podcast. Before I let you go, I have to pause and say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here is the fuel that ignites this movement. I am incredibly moved that you trust in us enough to click play. You, my friends, are the caped heroes in this story, the guardians of your family's learning journey, and a beacon of hope for your community. Be bold. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Thanks again for tuning in and taking this courageous leap outside of the box for this educational revolution. Welcome to the front line.